Here is
Yeah,
the
cool.
button. Mate, this is a privilege. The Thrive Lab. How do we
Yes.
thrive, Renee?
Oh, wow. Starting with a big question. Okay. I think, honestly, there's two key parts of it. It's connection and purpose. Everything I've read points to those two things. So you need to have a bigger cause than you in your life, whether that's a God or an amazing job that you contribute to, or a family, or something that's outside of yourself. And you need to have connection to other people. Connection to other people is linked to a long and happy life. And yeah, and social isolation, the inverse, is linked to really bad health outcomes, really bad mental well-being. So yeah, that's how you live a happy life. Find purpose and find connection. If you do nothing else, those two things will be the big ticket wins. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. See you later. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, there we go. Done.
Life completed it, mate. Let's jump into those. Let's dissect them a little bit. So mainly so I can get it through my very thick and blonde skull. Right. Let's go purpose, right? What does that mean to you?
For me, like personally,
Yeah.
I guess my own purpose is, oh, that's probably not what you're asking, but I'll just say that. But anyway,
No, no,
my own
please.
purpose, my own purpose is around, I since I was like 10, it sounds like I was a really weird kid. I've been interested in this idea of like contentment in society, like how do we design a more content society, and not kind of content in that you're happy with your lot, even if your lot sucks, but kind of having what we have and appreciating it whilst also striving for kind of better lives and better change, but striving in a way that's content. It's really hard to describe, but I've always been interested in that. And so I guess I've muddled around thinking, how do you actually live that? How do you actually help people be happier? And landed on at the moment that work is a big part of unhappiness. And so starting with the workplace and going, how do we make that human-centered? How do we make that a place where people aren't, extremely stressed and burnt out and going home and snapping at their kids? And how do we take away the stresses of work and make work a place of purpose and connection, to the earlier point? But I'm also, to be honest, really interested in a broader picture than work. Like, how do we rebuild community? How do we foster those ties that help us feel like we belong? I think we have hollowed out a lot of the big social stuff that we used to have. Like we used to have religion, we used to have kind of jobs for life, we used to have a much stronger kind of civil society feel, and I think we're at risk of being quite isolated these days. And so I care a lot about that, and I'm trying to figure out, how do you turn that interest into a job that you can do and still pay the bills, because you still need to eat. So yeah, that's my personal purpose. Contentment in society and deep chats for change as a
Deep chats
mechanism
for
for that.
change. I
Deep
like
chats for
that.
change. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the alternate tagline for Thrive Lab. But I wasn't sure anyone would understand. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, it's obvious, but it's also kind of not a thing that you can buy. So yeah, there's that tension, I guess, between the clarity and the kind of what you're selling. Yeah.
For sure. I think it feels like everyone's got an aversion to have a deep conversation these days.
It's interesting. Like, I think because I'm wired to seek that, I think when you have them, people are really appreciative. They're like, oh, it's so nice to go past, the weather and sport and like the latest drama that's on the news. But it can be hard to get into it, because I guess the nerd part of me is like, you do need some enabling conditions. I'm a parent. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I love them to bits, but it's really hard to connect deeply when you are also like have half your attention checking that someone's not going to, run off a cliff. So that's like, you need to be able to focus. And you kind of also need to know that it's a safe space where the other person wants to go deep as well. So you sort of have to do that little dance where you test the waters of, what kind of chat is this? Are we staying on the surface or are we going deep? But yeah, I love making places where it's clear that the deeper chat is wanted. Like, I just finished a group coaching program for women, and it was all about that. It was just fully deep chats about stuff you don't talk about: connection, purpose, joy, play, the big stuff that matters, but that we don't set aside time to talk about. So yeah, I do. I guess in the circles that I run in, there is an interest for people to have those deep chats, but I'm not sure about guys. My whole world is quite feminine. Like, I am married, but what do you think? Like, are guys less willing to go to those deep chat spaces? What do you reckon? I'm just flipping it. I'm going to be the interviewer now.
Mate, you can ask whatever question you want, you know. That's a good question. I really do like hearing what it's like on a lady's side, because I'm never gonna know, right? It's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen. You can have as many conversations as you want, read as many books, but I'm not gonna feel that, right? But from a dude's perspective, yeah, I mean, notoriously, the highest form of or the highest reason of death under the age of 45 is suicide, right, for blokes. So it's like, well, yeah, clearly they're socially isolated for some sort of reason, whether that is self-inflicted or whether that is cast upon them, right? But I think we need to understand that we have accountability for ourselves, and like you can't just say, "Oh, it's not okay for men to talk, so I'm just going to shut up." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you're choosing to shut up. Like that's on you, mate. Like whether somebody's going to listen to you or not, there's going to be a lot of people that's not going to care, but there are some folk out there which are unbelievable people. And all you got to do is one of the greatest pieces of advice I was ever given in fucking full stop was a very, very close friend of mine, a class from his family. And he just said, Alex, it's simple. I was like, what are you talking about? And he says, you just got to find your people.
Yeah.
And he goes, once you find your people, everything else becomes a hell of a lot easier. Like people are these complex, irrational, illogical beings, emotional. They go up and down. You're like, what the fuck is going on with this person? You're like, yeah, but they're not hard. They're just complicated. And life isn't complicated. It's just hard. And I think we're trying to make life easy by making it complicated and make people less complicated, and it's making it hard. I think it gets in the way of things. I was like, no. The human beings are complex. Try and figure yourself out. That's a task in itself. Then try and figure out everybody else around you. Good bloody luck, right? But like, try
Yeah.
and make life easy. It's not gonna happen, mate.
Yeah, I think like riffing on that, it's there is an interesting tension because I care about happiness, and people often equate happiness with hedonism, like just pleasure all the time, easy
Yeah.
all the time. And it's like, no, that is not the route to a happy life. It's like there's a book called oh, I'm going to forget the name of it, but it's basically the best goals you get at sideways, so not linearly. And it's like looking at the stars, right? Like if you look directly at a star, it becomes less bright, but if it's in your peripheral vision, then it becomes brighter. So I think rather than trying to make life easy and thinking that that will make us happy, it's, what are the elements of a good life that will be rewarding as a side benefit? Like, what do I intrinsically want to do and feel motivated to do, and how do I design that into my life? And then, good things might fall out of it, like well-being and happiness and a sense of contentment, but you can't aim straight at it. Yeah. But anyway, I just took your point and went where I wanted with it. But I totally agree that you do need to have a tribe. Like, it's super important to feel like you're not the only one battling for your corner, or, trying to push a particular cause or whatever. I don't know. I'm a first year business owner, and it's been really cool connecting with other people who are in a similar position. So yeah, there's power in that.
100% there's power in that. And I think we're all artists, right? But if you speak to any artist or writer or business person, right? You're like, okay, well, you've just finished a big project. You finished a painting, you finished a book or whatever. It's like, they're usually like in the weirdest spot post-achievement, because they're like, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
And you've just got to get back to the drawing board and just start working towards something. And I think we've got a negative connotation with work. Right? Like, oh, work, I gotta go do this again. It's like, work is everything. Work is like a unit, a moment, a measure. It's like, yeah, we got to pick this up and go from there. I got to walk to the grocery shop. It's all work. It's like,
Yeah,
but we
it's
have
all
to
labor of
find,
some sort.
exactly, we have to find beauty in that. And I think there's a lot to be found in there, but we don't look for it, man.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, say you are an artist and you've produced or maybe writing's an easier an example. If you say, like, I want to write a book, if that's your goal, that's a concrete thing that you deliver, but then at the end you get that big dopamine surge, and then to your point, you're kind of lost because you're like, oh, I wrote the book, I climbed the mountain, I did the thing. Whereas if it's like an identity-based goal, like if I'm an author or I'm a mountain climber or whatever, like, you're never done. and the never being done is actually a positive thing, because you never get into that kind of deep hole after the big success, because it's like, well, cool, like that was awesome, and now I have another mountain to climb because I'm a mountain climber. It's part of my identity. Yeah, so I think that's a good happiness hack. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to the question, what do I need, is a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't ever need to touch it. I don't even need to know what it is, but I need to know there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I gotta keep on chasing. And that's it. That's what kind of gets me out of bed in the morning. Like, otherwise, I think for a lot of blokes, circling back to your question, a lot of blokes end up getting gripped by this vice, whatever that vice may be, gambling, being lazy, whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter. It's all the same stuff, right? It's all trying to escape yourself, and it's that constant conversation between the angel and the devil, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And sometimes Mr. Hyde comes out for a little longer, and he holds onto the rail, the reins, and it's like, yeah, we have to have something to walk towards or to run towards, and we have to go out and we have to do work, and we have to have a sense of community that's going to slap us back into that line when inevitably, the waves get a little bit too much and it's going to slap us in the face. That's fine, but like, we need those other folks around, and we need to be able to be honest, right? And I think I was taught that from people, from coaching, just seeing them, just so many people in front of your face, and you're like, well, you can see when they're different. And you're like, right, are you going to keep lying to me and saying, yeah, you're fine, or are we going to have a real conversation? Right?
Yeah. It's that
Inevitably, you get
willingness.
into it, right?
Yeah, that willingness to be vulnerable is critical. I think also, to the Jekyll and Hyde point, I do think we're kind of over socialized. Like, there's a lot of rules about how you have to act today. I speak as a woman because that's what I am, but like, achieving the kind of box of being a modern working mum is freaking hard. And so we don't have much space to be like kind of wild, like, and not just doing like delivering all the things that all the shoulds, I guess. And so I think we also need to figure out a way to have less pressure on people. Like, we aren't perfect, and we do need like release valves. We are animals as well. And so, yeah, I think it's things like sport are really helpful for that, right? Like, it's like a way to get aggression out, a way to get the kind of wildness out while safely doing that. But I think we need more mechanisms for that, potentially, especially for guys, because yeah, modern life is quite constraining in a way that it probably wasn't before.
Yeah. So many rules, right?
So many what rules? Yeah.
Reels.
Sorry, I thought you said reels. Like, you're talking about Instagram now.
That's super bloody modern. No, it's not for me, mate. Like,
no, neither.
Not for me. You try some things, you're like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm never going to be a marketing guy. I'm just going to be someone who talks shit on the internet. But yeah, there's so many rules. There's so many rules you got to obey by, and I can only imagine what it would be like for a man. I was like, what do you mean? Like, she's figuring it out. It's her first time here too. Just like everybody else. Just like him, her, they, whatever. It's like, we're all trying to figure this shit out. Like, we're all going to make mistakes. It's okay.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of internalized judgment. Like, people might not even say anything, but you feel like they're thinking something, and then you judge yourself, and then you get defensive. So it's like a lot in your head as well. But anyway, I'm probably off the track of where you wanted to take this chat, but yeah, I think it's
take it wherever you
that's
want.
Important.
Honestly, we can talk about cats for an hour. I don't care.
I did have a cat nightmare the other day. Keep having this nightmare that I have 2 cats, and that I've forgotten that I have 2 cats, and I wake up and I'm like, I need to feed them, and then it takes me like a good minute to remember that I don't have any cats, and it's a horrible dream. I'm obviously neglecting something, but I don't know what that thing is.
I want to know how they find out what your dreams mean, because usually they're completely out of context, right? Like your teeth falling out or whatever. You're like, how does this relate to I got to get a new job or whatever it is, right? Like, how do you figure that out?
That stuff's interesting. I have heard that teeth falling out means fear of aging. So that feels like a logical fit, though. I have had also that dream, which is why I know that. My teeth crumbled when I ate something, and it was horrible.
Wow.
Yeah. Good times.
I mean, we're all going to die, right? I hate to take it to a morbid route, but we're all
I don't think it's morbid. One of one of the things on I have a bucket list on my mirror, which I'm not getting through very fast, but that's okay. I have a busy life. um, one of them is to get a memento mori tattoo, like remember you will die, because honestly, we don't think about it enough, and you will, and therefore, how do you want to live? Like, I think if we accepted death more, we'd probably be better at life. Yeah,
I
we're very
completely agree.
death denial-y as a culture.
I completely agree. I kind of
Mm.
subscribe to the school of thought of, I think it was Alan Watts, who says live life like you're already dead.
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, I'm already dead, so why wouldn't I try?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
what's
and
the
I
worst
love
that could happen?
and I think it's like Mexican cultures and stuff. They have, well, there's obviously the Day of the Dead, but there's also death cafes. Have you heard of this?
Oh,
And it kind of loops back to the like deep chats thing. I did think there is one in Auckland at the Auckland Art Gallery. But you basically meet on a regular, you can do it a couple of ways. You can have a dedicated death cafe, which is always that. People go there and they talk about death, and there's prompting questions on the table, like on a little card to talk about while you have a coffee. Or there's one at Auckland Art Gallery, and it's, I think, monthly, and people go and there's like a facilitator and they just talk about things to do with death and reflections, and it's kind of that deep facilitated chat with a whole bunch of strangers, but it's apparently really kind of life bringing. So that's awesome. I've been meaning to go along.
here's a question.
Hmm.
How would you go about opening up a deep and vulnerable conversation? How would you change the environment, the energy of the environment to feel safe? Personally, how would you
Hmm.
do that?
Hmm. My first thought is there's a thing called psychogeography, which is basically the way the room and the space feels. So bringing, like, say it was a group of 4 people, bringing the chairs closer together, having like it be a bit cozier feeling, like it's a bit cheesy, but soft furnishings and dimmer lighting create a space that feels welcoming. And from there, I think honestly, just using classic facilitation techniques helps, like getting people to warm up by talking about themselves, finding common links between people, like, what brought you here today? What do you want to get out of it? That kind of reflective headspace, starting with an easy, personal centric question that people can, there's no right or wrong. So people get talking, they get comfortable. And then it's just kind of like a dive, right? Like you start in the shallows and you go deeper with your questions. And I think if it was a facilitated chat, it would be important to have it be progressively deeper. You can't jump straight to the hardest question, right? Like I have seen other people make this mistake where they kind of flip-flop between really shallow questions and really deep questions. Like if you're having a dinner party, what 3 people would you invite? And then basically like, how are you finding it moving to New Zealand and being socially isolated and new here? And how's that? And then like another shallow question. I'm like, oh, it's really jarring. Like it needs to feel smooth. Yeah. And then honestly, like personal revelation and personal sharing. Like if you show that you trust the group is more likely to trust you back. So you can kind of lead a conversation to a deeper place by being more honest. Like I'm an overly honest mum. I tell my friends when I'm having a crap day. Like if I try really hard not to be mean to my kids, but sometimes I swear at them. And if I've done that, like I'll tell my friends, and I don't try and be a perfect person, because then you free other people to not be perfect either. And yeah, and that's where the depth comes, I think. If we're all just pretending to be perfect Instagram worthy, it's not real, and it's not deep, and it's not connecting. Yeah.
I think about the quote at the end of Coach Carter quite a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
and as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same as they are liberated from their own fear.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
love that.
the ripple effect that we have on others, that we're more than likely never going to find out. We're never going to know. Never going to truly
Mm-hmm.
know, to the extent, maybe it's somebody passing in the street that we give them a little smile or a tip of the cap or a nod of the head, or we just don't look down and away from them like we're ignoring them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have
Yeah.
changed the trajectory of their entire day.
Yeah, for sure. Like this came up yesterday actually in that group coaching thing. One of the people in there had been through a really hard breakup, like 10 years ago. We were talking about how you don't know the ripple effects. And she said, 10 years later, someone that she peripherally knew in her circle at that time, but wasn't very close with, came up to her and said, you ending your relationship that was very toxic and like not a positive thing to be in gave me the strength to do the same thing a few years later. So like your choices affected my choices in a really positive way. And she would have never known, you know? So I love that because you don't know. Not everything is trackable. Not everything is visible, but doesn't mean that you aren't making an impact.
That beauty and the benefit of that community, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's I'm fascinated by people's energy, right? It sounds super hippy dippy, but you know, I spend most of my time and I pay most of my bills from coaching, right? See people, whether that's online or whether that's mostly in person, and you feel their energy change, and you're like, wait, hold on a minute, like there's got to be something here, you know, rather than just yes, no, sir. It's oh, okay, like somebody's having a bad day, and you can figure things out, and you get these social cues, and like we said before we started this thing, like the body language from back home, like you end up learning some stuff, like, and you learn the individual as well, and you're like, there is so many more ways we can communicate with one another and connect with one another than just verbal, physical, emotional. There's like there's ways that we don't even understand that we're doing. People are these fascinating characters, but I think people are fucked. Don't get me wrong. I think they're a pain in the ass. And I think I'm probably number one up there. But the people are a fascinating character, and some
You
days
tell
it's
your
like
coaches that you like quietly think you're fucked, but
well, the C word on the back might be coach. She might have 5 letters, but they usually call me the 4-letter one. And I'm like, that's okay. You can call me whatever you want. We're still going to be in here doing some adult PE. And guess what? When we walk out, we're fingers crossed going to be 1% better human being. Doesn't really matter about kettlebell swings and bloody burpees. It matters about whether you're a better person.
Yeah, nice. Can
And
I ask you a quick question? Oh, sorry.
You can ask me whatever you want, mate.
Do you mainly coach? Do you mainly coach guys or both or?
No. Non-discriminatory. I'll coach anybody.
Non-discriminatory. Yeah, cool. Because I'm wondering, I guess back to that question about openness across the genders. Like, do you think there's a rising interest in men to have like coaching and counseling and therapy and stuff, or not? That wasn't a very good question because it was leading and closed. But anyway,
I know where you're going with it. I don't know. Probably the most powerful thing that we could ever say, right? But I don't know. I think some folks, yeah, they feel more accepted, but I think a lot of folks are still in well, people care whether the outcome is achieved or not. They don't give a fuck whether it breaks me. They care whether I can do it or whether I can bring it to the table. And a lot of blokes fall into that mindset of like, I got to get the work done.
Right.
They don't care about me. They care about whether the work's done. I was like, well, for some of the time, that needs to happen. Yes, 100%. But it can't be all of the time because then you won't be here anymore. And guess what? The work's not being done because you're not here.
Yeah.
And it's a funny one, right? I have a privilege of coaching coaches, trying to upskill this thing and help more folks out there around the world. And anecdotally, I've just seen that ladies need to be built up and blokes need to be stripped down. Right?
I've heard a similar thing.
Of like, no. Chicks need to understand their competence to build their confidence and then just let them do their thing. They're going to be pretty good. And blokes need to unlearn all the bullshit and all the coping mechanisms that they've ended up falling into. You basically have to strip them down.
Yeah.
And we do that through physical adversity. And then you get into the weeds from vulnerable, safe conversations, deep conversations. And you're like, right, less of the shit now. Okay. We've proven ourselves, you've put the tape measure away. You know, everybody's like picked up some heavy things. We feel better. All right, right. Less of the shit. What's going on?
Picked up some heavy things. I love it.
It's honestly,
Ah,
we're less evolved as a species. It's for damn sure. You know, it's like you just need to feel some sort of like internal struggle. Usually, that's just picking up a heavy object and placing it from A to B. And you're like, right, have you got that out of your system? Okay, cool. Can we have like an adult conversation now? Yeah, okay,
oh wow,
sounds
that's
good.
good pro tip. Thank you. I'll take that into to my life. Here's a
Just like,
heavy thing. Can you shift it? Cool. Let's chat now.
yeah, just have a
I love
big
it.
sandbag or something. I was like, can you go move this a mile? Can you take this to me,
Oh, I
mams?
love it. I love it. That's so funny.
But I think there's a lot of similarities in that as well, though, mate. I think there's a lot of blokes that need building up in confidence. You won't know because they probably won't tell you. And I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of ladies that need to do the opposite. You know, it's we're more
Yeah.
similar than we are different, but there are specific differences that we also need to highlight and address and understand for one another, so we can build that connection, right? Rather than just
Yeah.
me versus you. It's like fucking hell, we're all people.
Yeah, I think that it's almost like reverse socialization, right? Like because I have the little kids and there's so much socialization around like pink and unicorns and fairies and princesses and blah blah blah, blah. And we're lucky now because a lot of the role models in movies are actually competent women like Moana who can sail across the ocean. So that's nice. Like I'm glad for that. But yeah, it does feel like my kids are innately really confident at the age of 3 and 6, and I don't want them to lose that. So I agree that yeah, you kind of get questioned and you get like you start to question your own competence as a woman over time. And yeah, there are less kind of role models you can point to that you're like, I want to be her in the future. And so yeah, I agree. Let's just kind of balance the scales, right? Like let's build the woman up and kind of get the dudes to have a few more questions and a little bit more humility. That's the thing that honestly, like if I'm going to have a rant because I see the clock ticking on remaining meeting time, I think the world would be a much better place if we had, especially, I'm going to sound a bit bigoted, but especially older male leaders, like having more of a questioning, curious mindset about what don't I know and what else can other people share with me versus like, nah, I'm good. I'm at the top of the pile. I don't need to listen anymore. Like I find people that speak in statements and ask no questions and have no curiosity really frustrating to be around. So I think the world, yeah, that's what the world needs.
I couldn't agree more with you, mate. And I think we get there by just dousing them in a little bit of fitness. It's like, here's some hard things, you know, here's some heavy shit, pick it and bloody run with it, or go for a row or go for a run. I was like, it's difficult, man. And it strips down that like ignorance and arrogance. It just fucking just dissipates to the side. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I probably am wrong in most situations.
And like I do try and have empathy too, right? Because it's that all that behavior is a product of socialization too. So, you know, yeah, try not to get too angry, but yeah, it is frustrating sometimes being in those conversations.
Again, people are complicated, mate. Complicated little buggers, man.
Complicated but fascinating because yeah, I
Fascinating people.
studied behavioral science and I love all the ways that we're weird. It's great. It's so odd.
I got 3 questions.
Okay, cool.
What's the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received?
Oh, shivers. Really hard. The one that springs to mind, probably not the greatest, but the one that springs to mind is when I was like sad about getting not into the first 11 like starting lineup in hockey, and my dad said something like, you know, today's news is tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper, like that basically like things that seem massive now everyone forgets and it doesn't matter, so like don't over index on the importance of this one thing. So that was useful. Yeah. And the other piece of life advice is kind of that thing, but by a Nobel laureate called Daniel Kahneman, who said nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you're thinking about it. Because in life, because actual life is broad lens, right? But when you're over focusing, it's narrow.
Yeah, it's Charlie Chaplin, right? And life, when you zoom in, looks like a tragedy, but when you zoom out, it looks like a comedy.
Oh, I love that.
It's all about perspective.
So I
What's
have like issues with him lately because I found out about his creepy background. But anyway, let's not go into the Charlie Chaplin debate. Yes, second question.
People are always fucked, right? What's the worst piece of life advice you've ever received?
I don't think I received any. Oh, someone once said if you do a PhD, you'll be overqualified.
Oh,
I don't really agree with it. I don't think that's the worst advice. I haven't received any really bad advice, but I guess like overall, any advice that pushes you towards just doing what everyone else is doing rather than listening to who you are and forging that path would be terrible advice, because things haven't been done until they're done, right? So just because it's not a thing yet doesn't mean you can't make it a thing. I did get told, it wasn't advice, but about 10 years ago, I was talking to someone and I said, I want to go back to uni and study happiness. And they said, that's not a thing. Who you wouldn't, there's no faculty of happiness. Where would you sit within in terms of faculties? I don't get it. That's not a job. And they basically kind of shot me down. And then the same day I got a massive parking ticket and I was like, this is a terrible freaking day. And then and then like 5 years later, I found a course on behavior, happiness, and public policy at the London School of Economics, where I went to do my master's. And I was like, it is a fucking thing. Studying happiness is a thing. It's legitimately like the OECD talk about it now. They have reports on it. There's people that focus on well-being explicitly rather than GDP as a way of getting to well-being. And so that person was wrong. And it gives me great joy to say so.
fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, last question. What are the 3 words you would tell your younger self?
Oh, 3 words. Okay. Probably just you'll be okay. Like it's all gonna work out. And even the stuff that's hard, like, you will get through it. Like I've been around hard things. I have not experienced personally heaps of hard stuff, but I've had like family members who've had really hard fertility struggles, and my my husband lost his brother in an accident, and like hard shit happens all around us. But it is amazing how resilient people are. So yeah, I guess it goes back to the first piece of advice, like hard stuff will happen and you'll still be okay. The lens is broad. So yeah.
You'll be okay.
Hmm.
Mate, thank you so much. This has been an honor and a privilege.
Oh, it was lovely to chat to you and learn about what you do as well. So thank you for the time.
I just talk shit for a living.
I love it. It was just like an alignment there. Deep chats for change, talking shit for a living. It's good.
That's kind of it, like
Yeah.
take some nuggets out of there, but there's probably going to be a lot of bullshit. Swear like a sailor, say words in a very weird accent, but hey, take what you can.
Time to make some reels.
No,
I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
That's your job.
Lovely to chat to you.
Mate, appreciate it.
You.
You have a great day and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, you too. Cool.
Thanks,
Cheers.
boss.
Alex.
See you later, everybody.